So the predation, what would happen to all the energy fixed by autotrophic organisms if community has no animals to eat the plants? You can think of the predation as nature's way of transferring to higher trophic levels the energy fixed by plants. So predation as nature's way of transferring to higher trophic levels the energy fixed by plants. So when we think of predator and prey, most probably it is the tiger and the deer, and but a sparrow eating any seed is no less a predator. But a sparrow eating any seed is no less a predator. Although animals eating plants are categorized separately as herbivores, they are in a broad ecological context not very different from predators. So animals eating plants are also herbivores. They are also predators, right? So besides acting as conduits for energy transfer across trophic levels, predators play other important roles. So they're acting as conduits for energy transfer across trophic levels, right? And they keep second function is that they keep prey populations under control. But for predators, prey species could achieve very high population densities and cause ecosystem instability. When certain exotic species are introduced into a geographical area, they become invasive and start spreading fast because the invaded land does not have its natural predators. The prickly pear cactus introduced into Australia in the early 1920s caused havoc by spreading rapidly into millions of hectares of rangeland. Finally, the invasive cactus was brought under control only after a cactus feeding predator, a moth, from its natural habitat was introduced into the country. So, a cactus feeding predator, that is a moth. So, biological control methods adapted in agriculture pest control are based on the ability of the predator to regulate prey population. So, biological control methods adopted in agriculture pest control are based on the ability of the predator to regulate prey population. Predators also help in maintaining species diversity in a community. Predators also help in maintaining species diversity in a community by reducing the intensity of competition among competing prey species. In the rocky intertidal communities of the American Pacific coast, the starfish pigaster is an important predator. In a field experiment, when all the starfish were removed from an enclosed intertidal area, more than 10 species of invertebrates became extinct within a year because of interspecific competition. So, if a predator is too efficient and overexploits his prey, if a predator is too efficient and overexploits his prey, then the prey might become extinct, and following the predators will also become extinct for lack of food. So this is the reason why predators are prudent in nature. Prey species have evolved various defenses to lessen the impact of predation. Now, some species of insects and frogs are some species of insects and frogs are cryptically colored, that is camouflage, to avoid being detected easily by the predator. Some are poisonous and therefore avoided by the predators, right? Some are poisonous and therefore avoided by the predators. The monarch butterfly is highly distasteful to its predator, but because of a special chemical present in its body. Interestingly, the butterfly expels this chemical during its caterpillar stage by feeding on a poisonous weed. So, for plants, herbivores are the predators. Nearly 25% of the all insects are known to be phytophagous, feeding on plant sap and other parts of plant. The problem is particularly severe for plants because, unlike animals, they cannot run away from their predators. Plants therefore have evolved an astonishing variety of morphological and chemical defenses against herbivores. So plants make a variety of morphological and chemical defenses against herbivores. Thorns, that is acacia and cactus, are the most common morphological means of defense. So thorns of acacia and cactus. So many plants produce and store chemicals that make the herbivore sick when they are eaten, inhibit feeding or digestion, disrupt its reproduction, or even kill it. If you have seen wheat calotropis growing in abandoned fields, the plant produces highly poisonous cardiac glycosides, and that is why you never see any cattle or goats browsing on this plant. A wide variety of chemical substances that we extract from plants on a commercial scale, nicotine, caffeine, quinine, styrene, opium, are produced by them actually as defenses against grazers and browsers. Now the second interaction is a competition. So when Darwin spoke of the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest in nature, he was convinced that He was convinced that interspecific competition is a potent force in organic evolution. It is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species compete for the same resources that are limiting. But this is not entirely true. Firstly, totally unrelated species could also compete for the same resource. For instance, in some shallow South American lakes, visiting flamingos and resident fishes. So American is that is visiting flamingos and resident fishes compete for their common food, that is the zooplankton in the lake. Secondly, resources need not be limiting for competition to occur. In interference competition, the feeding efficiency of one species might be reduced due to the interfering and inhibitory presence of the other species, even if resources, that is food and space, are abundant. Therefore, competition is based upon as a process in which the fitness of one species, measured in terms of its R, the extrinsic rate of increase, is significantly lower in the presence of another species. Okay, it is relatively easy to demonstrate in laboratory experiments, as Gauss and other experimental ecologists did. When the resources are limited, the competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species. So when resources are limited, the competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species. The competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species. Competitive exclusions but evidence for such competitive exclusions occurring in nature is not always conclusive. Strong and perceived cursor counter. The abundant tortoise in Galapagos Islands became extinct within a decade after goats were introduced on the island, apparently due to the greater browsing efficiency of the goats. Another evidence for the occurrence of competition in nature comes from what is called competitive release, a species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of the presence of competitively superior species, is found to expand its distributional range dramatically when the competing species is experimentally removed. Now, Connor's elegant experiments show that on the rocky sea coast of Scotland, the larger and competitively superior barnacle balanus dominates the intertidal area and excludes the smaller barnacle cathameras from that zone. In general, herbivores and plants appear to be more adversely affected by competition than carnivores. In general, herbivores and plants appear to be more adversely affected by competition than carnivores. So, Gauss' competitive exclusion principle states that two closely related species competing for the same resource cannot coexist independently, and the competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually. This may be true if resources are limiting. But not otherwise. So more recent studies do not support such gross generalization about competition, while they do not rule out the occurrence of interspecific competition in nature. Yes, interspecific competition occurs in nature. They point out that species facing competition might evolve mechanisms that promote coexistence rather than exclusion. One such mechanism is resource partitioning. If two species compete for the same resources, they could avoid competition by choosing, for instance, different times for feeding or different foraging patterns. McArthur showed that 5 closely related species of warblers living on the same tree were able to avoid competition and coexist due to behavioral differences in their foraging activities. Now, third interaction is the parasitism. Now, considering that this parasitic mode of life ensures the free loading and meals, it is not surprising that parasitism has evolved in so many taxonomic roles, from plants to higher vertebrates. Many parasites have evolved to be host specific. They can parasitize only a single species of host in such a way that both host and the parasite tend to co-evolve. That is, if the host evolves special mechanism for rejecting or resisting the parasite has to evolve mechanism to counteract and neutralize in order to be successful with the same host species. In accordance with their lifestyles, parasites evolve special adaptations such as the loss of unnecessary sense organs, presence of adhesive organs or suckers to cling on to the host, loss of digestive system, and high reproductive capacity. The life cycles of parasites are often complex, involving one or two intermediate hosts or vectors to facilitate parasitism of its primary host, the human. Liver flux, that is a treatment parasite, depends on two intermediate hosts, that is a snail and a fish, to complete its life cycle. Fish and snail, right? The human liver flux, the treatment parasite. The malarial parasite needs a vector, that is mosquito, to spread to other hosts. Majority of the parasites harm the host. They may reduce the survival, growth, and reproduction of the host and reduce the population density. Majority of the parasites harm the host. They may reduce the survival, growth, and reproduction of the host and reduce its population density. They might render the host more vulnerable to predation by making it physically weak. Do you believe that an ideal parasite should be able to thrive within the host without harming it? Do you believe that an ideal parasite should be able to thrive within the host without harming it? Then why didn't natural selection lead to the evolution of such totally harmless parasites? Then why didn't natural selection lead to the evolution of such totally then why didn't natural selection lead to the evolution of such totally harmless parasites? Do you believe that an ideal parasite should be able to thrive within the host without harming it? And why didn't natural selection lead to the evolution of such totally harmless parasites? So parasites that feed on the external surface of the host organisms are called ectoparasites. The most familiar examples of this group that lies on humans and ticks on dogs. Many marine fish are infested with ectoparasite copypods. Coscuta, a parasitic plant that is commonly found growing on hedge plants, has lost its chlorophyll and lives in course of evolution. It derives its nutrition from the host plant, which is parasites. The female mosquito is not considered a parasite, although it needs our blood for reproduction. Can you explain why? In contrast, endoparasites are those that live inside the host body at different sites, that is liver, kidney, lungs, and red blood cells. The life cycles of endoparasites are more complex because of their extreme specialization. Their morphological and anatomical features are greatly simplified while emphasizing their reproductive potential. They have the high reproductive potential. Now, brood parasitism in birds is a fascinating example of parasitism in which the parasitic bird lays its eggs in the nest of its host and lets the host incubate them. During the course of evolution, the eggs of the parasitic bird have evolved to resemble the host eggs in size and color to reduce the chances of the host bird detecting the foreign eggs and injecting them from the nest. Try to follow the movements of the cuckoo, that is squirrel, and the crow in your neighborhood park during the breeding season, that is spring to summer, and watch brood parasitism. Now the fourth interaction is the commensalism. Now this is the interaction in which one species benefits and the other is neither harmed nor benefited. Okay, an orchid growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch and barnacles growing on the back of the whale benefit while neither the mango tree nor the whale derives any apparent benefit. The cattle regret and grazing cattle in close association aside you are mostly likely to catch if you live in farm rural areas is a classic example of commensalism. The graze always forage close to where the cattle are grazing because the cattle as they move steer up and flush out insects from the vegetation that otherwise might be difficult for the graze to so cattle regrets and grazing cattles, right? Cattle regrets is kind of bird and the grazing cattle, right? That is cows and these cattle, right? Another example of commensalism is the interaction between sea anemone that has stinging tentacles and the clone fish that lives among them. So sea anemone and the stinging tentacles and the clone fish that lives among them. The fish gets protection from the predators which stay away from the stinging stings and tentacles. The anemone does not appear to derive any benefit by hosting the clone fish. Okay, so mutual relationship between fig tree and wasp. The fig flower is pollinated by the wasp and wasp laying eggs in the fruit tree. Now fifth is the mutualism, right? Mutualism is the last interaction, that is the mutualism. So what about the mutualism? So the interaction confers benefits on both the interacting species. Lichens represent an intimate mutualistic relationship between a fungus and photosynthetic algae or cyanobacteria. So fungi and photosynthetic algae or cyanobacteria. Similarly, the mycorrhiza are association between fungi and the roots of the higher plants. The fungi help the plant in the absorption of essential nutrients from the soil, while the plant in turn provides the fungi with high energy. So plant provides the fungi with high yielding carbohydrates, right? The most spectacular and evolutionary fascinating examples of mutualism are found in plant-animal relationships. Plants need the help of animals for pollinating their flowers and dispersing their seeds. What is the uses of animals? To pollinating their flowers and dispersing their seeds. Animals obviously have to be paid fees for the services that plants expect from it. When plants offer rewards or fees in the form of pollen and nectar for pollinators and juicy and nutritious fruits for seed dispersal. So pollen and nectar for pollinators and juicy and nutritious fruits for seed dispersal. But the beneficial system should also be safeguarded against cheaters. Now there are some cheaters, that is pollen robbers. For example, animals that try to steal nectar without aiding in they are pollen robbers, steal nectar without aiding in pollination. Now you can see that why plant animal interactions often involve co-evolution of the mutualistic, that is the evolution of the flower and its pollinator species are tightly linked with one another, because there is a possibility of getting cheated by. In many species of fig trees there is a tight one-to-one relationship with the pollinator species of wasp. So in many species of fig tree so in many species of fig trees there is a tight one-to-one relationship with the pollinator species of wasp. So fig and wasp, right? It means that a given fig species can be pollinated only by its partner wasp species and no other species. So this is like tight one-to-one relationship. Okay. Now the female wasp uses the fruit not only as an oviposition, that egg laying site, but uses the developing seeds within the fruit for nourishing its larva. So nourishing larva and for the oviposition, right? The wasp pollinates the fig inflorescence while searching for suitable egg laying sites. The wasp pollinates the fig inflorescence while searching for suitable egg laying sites. In return for the favor of pollination, the fig offers the wasp some of its developing seeds as food for developing wasp larvae. Orchids show a breed-building diversity of floral patterns, many of which have evolved to attract the right pollinator insect, that is bees and bumblebees. So orchid attracts pollinator insect, bees and bumblebees, right? And ensure guaranteed pollination by it. Not all orchids offer rewards. The Mediterranean orchid of virus employs sexual deceit to get pollination done by a species of bee. Then one petal of its flower bears an uncanny resemblance to the female of the bee in size, color, and markings. The male bee is attracted to what it perceives as female, so it pseudocopulates with the flower, and during that process is dusted with the pollen from the flower. So when this same bee pseudocopulates with another flower, it transfers pollen to it and thus pollinates the flower. Here you can see how co-evolution operates. If the female bee's color patterns change even slightly for any reason during evolution, pollination success will be reduced unless the orchid flower co-evolves to maintain the resemblance of its petals to the female bee. So this is showing bee a pollinator on the orchid plant. So this is how your chapter is done in here right now. So this is how your chapter is done in here right now. And if something is there, right? So this is how your chapter is done right now.